Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Modcast. I'm Jeff Ketchum, Alex Dunlap, Anwar Richardson, Jason Sukamil, all joining me to talk about build up to Saturday's game in Lubbock between Texas and Texas Tech. We just got finished watching and Anwar participating in the Steve Sarkisian press gathering that was done on Zoom. Which is one of the reasons why Anwar gets to do this show from the confines of his home, which is never a bad thing. Want to remind everybody before we get started, this Modcast brought to you by MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you want to start living the dream, call Andy. Let him help you set up your own franchise and stop working for the man, and you can start being the man. 404-973-9901. Give Andy a call. We heavily endorse his services. He's had a lot of success. Also, like the video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, and oh, by the way, we do a ton of content all week long. And yes, Anwar did have a great show last night on the Drunk Uncle show.
Oh man, dude, I got to jump in. That's the first time I've ever, no offense, Anwar, I'm not a regular viewer of it. It was the first time.
Alex,
I think
you're on Orangebloods.
It's the first time I've ever seen it, dude. Who was the guy you had on? Who is El Presidente? Man, that guy's a goat. Who is this guy?
He is Eric Thomas, I think is his name. He's usually there. So I basically, the drink started flowing, and I was like, look. You throw 50 bones, Eric Torres, thank you. You throw 50 bones on the super chat and you can be on with the Drunk Uncle tonight. And he threw 50 on and we gave him a link.
That's how he did it.
And he got to come on and talk.
That's fantastic. I thought the highlight of the show was your guest from Red Raider Sports predicting a 21-17 score. And it just was like, it just felt like the most obscure. I've been covering, Jason, think about all the Texas Tech games that we've covered in our lifetime. 21-17 just feels like the weirdest score I've ever. He could have said 80-73. And I was like,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, why not? He said 21-17. And I was like, you think an AFC North game is about to break out.
Which is fascinating. There's a part of me, a nice guy. I think.
Which one was it? I didn't see it. Who was it, Omar? From
what's his name? Is it Adolfo? I forget his name. Justin Apodaca.
From Red Raider Sports?
Yeah, yes, I didn't recognize him, Jason.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's fairly new. I kind of sensed that maybe he didn't like me that much. Like I was feeling those vibes. Like he did it because he was invited, but I don't know if he really wanted to be there or not. Because he just.
Maybe it was the hat. It could have been the hat.
And then he did talk about throwing tortilla shells or the tortillas rather at games and stuff. So that made me know that he is a fan of Texas Tech and he's young. So I was like, I don't think this guy's really feeling me right now. I'm just going to be honest with you. So,
it does speak to how I think that prediction let me know that they think people who cover Tech think that defense is legit. Mm-hmm. That, if he picked Texas to win the game, and he said, look, if Texas is going to win, it'll take an extra special teams defense, something like that. I thought the show was really informative from a Tech perspective and who they think they are. But Anwar, they think that defense that gave up 70 a year ago is going to come in and do a much better job at home. Now, depending on the quarterback situation at Texas, maybe the game does play a little lower scoring.
But here's the thing. But Catch, what's interesting about what he had said, and Jason, I'm sure you already posted your matchup stuff is there, and but Alex, you'll find this interesting. So their starting quarterback for Tech has been hurt, and they've had his backup in there, and this backup has created 5 turnovers in the last 2.5 games. Last 2 weeks, he's had 5 turnovers as a backup, and then he's also had 2 pick sixes as well with this 5 turnovers. So then when I hear 21-17, I'm like, wait, This guy sounds
Omar,
horrible.
I think he's thrown 5 interceptions and he fumbled it twice, but they got the fumbles back. So he almost had 7 turnovers the last 2 weeks, man. So, but listen, I say so. I think the next 4th-rated passer. He's going to put up yards, but he's going to make some dumb mistakes too. In Texas has talked about, hey, they need more turnovers. They need more turnovers. And
If you can't get them this week. This is where you regress to the mean and you come up with 8 on Saturday, and suddenly you rank like 25th in the country in forced turnovers.
Is this like being 25 years old and going to Cougar Night in Steiner Ranch? Like, I mean, if you can't get it there, you can't get it anywhere.
As it relates to turnovers and creating them from the Texas defense, because they've only got 2 this season. But to be fair, when they get their turnovers, they've made them count by taking them and making those into pick sixes on both occasions.
They should have had 2 fumble. They should have had 2 fumble recoveries this last week. I mean, they caused 2 fumbles. It's just you have to recover them. You have to recover them.
Simple as that. Let's jump into some conversation about Steve Sarkisian's newsmaking press gathering. He has turned off the snarkiness and the meanness with regards to the quarterback discussion. He is now this week, Monday onward, he gave you more information than I think you thought you would get. And then today, he doesn't tell everybody who his starting quarterback is going to be on Saturday, but onward, he let us know how many are traveling. He let us know that Quinn Ewers will make the trip and suit up and be available on some level. Your big takeaways from, and we'll just go around the room, big takeaways from what was said today with Steve Sarkisian's press gathering.
The most interesting part for me, Catch, was, I mean, wasn't expecting him to name a starter, at this moment. And so I think he's made that clear that he's not going to do that. It would have been poking the bear, to borrow a Sarkisian term, if you asked him who's going to be his starting quarterback. But I did find it interesting that he will travel for, when you start thinking about how valuable, those travel spots really are, bringing a 4th quarterback is very interesting. And he said that, I guess it's an interesting dichotomy, right? Because you got to invest in Malik and you've got to get him ready to compete for next season. And so leaving him at home probably doesn't help with that. You also got to make sure, you keep a guy engaged and make him feel like he's a part of the team. And it's probably the last thing you want is Malik feeling like he's not a part of this team. But could have left Charles Wright at home. But the fact that he's going to bring 4 of those guys when you only get so many travel spots, I thought that was kind of a little interesting, kind of an enlightening part of the press conference for me.
What about you, Jason?
Well, first of all, I loved Onward. This first time I'm saying this. Your question on Monday to Sark was like, "I'll take whatever you can give me, dude, on this." It was like, all right, ain't bullshit. Just whatever you want to give me, just give it to me.
Hey, youngest can't be choosers right now, man. Yeah, whatever, man. Dude.
As I was taking notes, I was kind of laughing out loud. I was like, oh, man, that's beautifully delivered.
I had a huge smile on my face when I said it, too.
Yeah, well, maybe that softened him up a little bit because, like Ed said, he seemed to be in a better mood today. But, yeah, I think the taking 4 is interesting, but I don't think there's any way you could not take 4, honestly. I mean, Hudson Card, I'm assuming he's more healthy this week than last week, but he's 1 play away from being out. And then you're down to Charles Wright and Malik Murphy. And both those guys, I mean, Sark said it, he goes, just getting those guys in that environment, whether or not they play, having them on the headsets, the offensive game planning meetings, being around the crowd and everything else. I mean, it can pay dividends down the road. We've seen how quickly things can change at the quarterback position and how close Texas was to needing Charles Wright and maybe Malik Murphy at some point. So I think it's a good call to take 4. I mean, yeah, I get it with Sark. Like paring down to 70 is not easy. I'm sure it's kind of like playing fantasy football. There's always like 10 guys I want to take on waivers, but I'm not going to cut this guy. I mean, so I understand why it's probably tough for him to pick 70 guys and leave some guys off, but the experience gained by those 4 guys. And I thought he had some good things to say about Malik Murphy and the way he's made progress the past couple of weeks. So I think it's the right call to take 4. I don't think they'll need him this week, but boy, you'd rather have him there just in case you do.
Mr. Dunlap, kind of an opening shot moment for you. Anything stand out today?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I think that they're, when he said that they're taking these guys for the experience and stuff like that, that tipped off to me that hopefully hopefully it doesn't come down to playing Quinn. It doesn't feel like, at least to me, just my hunch, you guys, I know you guys have had talks all week, but based on what I've heard from you guys and just my general hunch as a close observer of the team, I don't think they'll play Quinn Ewers this week if they don't, absolutely have to. I think it's interesting. I thought it was interesting what he said about how good, Malik Murphy has looked, and it made me think. It's like, well, if something were to happen to Hudson, does that mean that Charles Wright is not? I mean, what do you guys? What is
Charles Wright's third still, but just to jump in, I agree, Alex. Like, if Quinn Ewers, if he's available this week and is going to play, you probably don't take 4. So that, to me, is kind of a little bit of a tipping. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but to me, that feels like he tipped his hand a little bit that it's probably going to be Hudson Card and Quinn's probably not available this week. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but
Jason, I think it's an interesting point. I looked at it as he said, I'd like to take 90 when he was talking about the numbers that he wishes he could take to the game and to participate. It is strange. It's completely common to take 2 quarterbacks or take a quarterback in that 70 and know that you're not going to play him because you want him on the headset, you want him to learn that environment and all of that stuff. It really is unusual to take 2 quarterbacks that you're not going to play.
You hope you're not going to play.
I mean, presumably, right? Yes. But I think that I don't think they want to play Charles Wright. So I don't know. You can look at it a couple of different ways. I think last week they wanted Hudson Card to start because I don't think they're ready to rock and roll with Charles Wright, and I think they'd be real hesitant to use him this week. So I wonder if Quinn is the break in case of emergency, right? Like, don't break glass unless there's an emergency. I wonder if you suit that guy up, and I don't know. I mean, again, it's a little unusual to take 4 and knowing that it's really rare that you would need to play that many in a single game, and spots on special teams, defense. Most of the guys that aren't traveling are freshmen who are probably in the middle of a red shirt. So it's not too hard to scale back to 70 if you just eliminate all the guys that probably – and most of the young guys haven't played a lot this season. This freshman class, for all the ballyhoo of it, they're not all Kelvin Hanks and Cole Hudson at this point with regards to playing time. I thought Anwar, as it relates to the quarterbacks, I thought it was interesting to hear go ahead, Jason. You're good. I thought it was interesting that when talking about Hudson Card, I think Dennis Della Pena asked a question about Hudson early on, and he was just, I think, trying to get something on Card to probably use for a story that they're doing. And Sark made sure to protect Hudson. It was one of the strongest times I've seen him come out and say, don't blame Hudson for Arkansas. That was the whole team. That was the coaches. Everybody. He used the word terrible, if I'm not mistaken, when describing everybody around Hudson. Yet he also made sure that when talking about Hudson, that he didn't say a single word that would indicate that Hudson's going to start, right? Like, there wasn't one, I just thought it was funny that Sark's found a way, whenever talking about the quarterbacks, to not give a single impression about what it is that he's going to do, even if he answered your question by saying, I'll know in advance, it won't come down to Saturday, but no leaves revealed if you're looking at them.
Catch, one day I would love to just, if I can have an off the record conversation with Sark and just to be able to chill with him one day. I would love to, because this whole thing is fascinating when he says, you guys are, blamed him for the Arkansas loss. And it's like, I would love to ask him and just come back and say, well, why did you bench him then? Because when you pull a guy and you never go back to it, and he's the only guy that gets benched after the Arkansas loss, it kind of makes it seem like he is to blame for it, right? It kind of makes it seem like he's the reason why this team lost. And so I would love one day just to be like, hey, man, I know you're saying like it's kind of like an us thing, but that was your call at the end of the day. Because if you felt like, hey, at the end of the day, if you felt like, hey, man, Hudson's not to blame, there's a lot of other variables that went in there, then Hudson starts the following week and you stay with him throughout the season. It's kind of the thing that you said all of last year, Catch. You felt like him getting pulled after the Arkansas game was a little bit unfair towards Hudson by not giving him another shot to go back out there. So, but look, new year, new day. Maybe at the end of the day, Catch, maybe Hudson has just done a little bit more to gain the confidence of Sarkisian this year. Maybe he's seen more in the offseason that makes him go like, yeah, you know what? It really wasn't all on him. And so maybe that's a testament to what Hudson's been able to do throughout the offseason. But we didn't bench him. Someone else did. And so that's the only thing that's a little interesting when he says it. But of course, that right now he's not tipping his hat. And that's one of the reasons why he's taking 4 quarterbacks.
But a couple thoughts on that. When he pulled him, even in that Arkansas game, Casey Thompson came in and played well. So it kind of made that decision to bench him the next week easy. And then Casey played well the next couple games. So,
Alex, I think Jason just admitted you won the bet.
I was reluctant to say that for sure. I kind of understand if Casey would have come in that Arkansas game and been bad, then probably maybe you go back to Hudson Card. But Casey played pretty well at the beginning there. In Catch, we're talking about the backup quarterbacks and like break glass in case of emergency for Quinn Ewers. I don't know, man. Like, who knows? Like, we need to do some more checking. I've heard Charles Wright's had a pretty good week of practice, but like one person told me, there's no way they could go to Charles Wright. Imagine if Sark says, hey, we're going to just rip this Band-Aid off. And, Hudson's been okay, but let's see what Charles can do. I mean, if you do that and you lose, I mean, Sark would never hear the end of it. So I think it's Hudson Card's job, but I do think Charles Wright has played well enough that if he has to get thrown in there, that maybe they have some confidence in him. But I don't know. They're taking Quinn for traveling purposes, but the fact that they're taking 4, going back to that, I don't think you take 4 unless you think Quinn Ewers is almost 100% out for this game.
Real quick on the Malik Murphy thing, Anwar. It's fascinating to me that you asked about Malik Murphy a couple of weeks ago when the injury first occurred, and Sark was very short with the topic itself, because he could have just as easily said, oh, he's a little bit banged up and we think he'll be back in the next week or so. But he was like, he's been injured or whatever that answer was. The last couple of weeks, every time Malik's name has popped up, including today, it feels like he's gone out of his way to say something nice about Malik. Do you think he's doing that because armchair quarterback here? Do you think he's just making sure that Malik knows he's loved a little bit? I don't know. It's interesting to me how the last couple of weeks there's been more Malik discussion, and almost all of it has been positive, and which is good. We all like Malik, so I think that's stuff that we want to hear. But it was just 2 weeks ago that he didn't even want to take the question.
Was it 2 weeks ago? Or was it last Monday? I feel like it may have been last Monday.
Oh shit! Was it like 9 days ago?
I feel like it was like last Monday when I asked it, because then it was, and then I feel like there was a few days later. Then there came the report about the scooter accident, and that was supposed to be this major catastrophe, and we kind of had our thing. And remember then someone asked me in a super chat about it last week, and I was like, I don't really like to get into that kind of stuff. I don't want to go against other reporters. And then all of a sudden you see Malik's out there throwing before the game. And so there's a part of me that was like, is Sark like saying, man, I am so tired of these damn media with some of their shit here. So you know what? Now I'm going to talk it up. There may be some of this, what you're talking about, because Catch, at the end of the day, with the transfer portal, you've got to manage, the feelings of your players, especially the quarterback. Like, you just can't just let guys feel like I'm not getting the love. Like, you're not saying anything positive about me. Like, he enters in, if you're Sark, he enters into after this season with the full possibility, more than likely, that Hudson Card he graduates and he leaves. So you probably lose Hudson in the transfer portal. You're going to have, you got Charles Wright, but you never really expected to play him. So you've got Quinn. You've got to secure Malik and make sure he's okay. And then Arch and whatever he's going to end up doing, right? So I do think there's a part too that he's also, I think he's smart enough to know, yeah, I do need to talk up Malik when I get the opportunities to do so. And yeah, maybe he should travel. I want to make sure I got to make sure that guy is okay, because what I can't afford is having some attrition in the transfer portal, have that guy feel like, they just don't love me at Texas. Let me go somewhere else.
Real quick, I do want to acknowledge Tom on the super chat. Big super chat donation. What up, OB fam? Drunk uncle. I missed your stream last night, but I watched it this morning. Damn it, no questions, just supporting. Thank you, Tom.
Tom's the man.
Tom is always good to us, man. I wish there were more people like Tom. Obviously, I wish more people would just give us money, but Tom is like a genuine positive supporter of the channel, always brings in positive energy. Do appreciate that. Alex, I'll ask this question specifically to you, but I want everybody's thoughts on this. You and I both this week have jumped on the Christian Jones deserves some damn respect kind of table. I did it on Monday. Your column comes out, your deep dig comes out today, and he's the highest rated offensive lineman from the UTSA game. So it's not even necessarily like a subjective opinion thing. Like, his play warrants some absolute respect at this point. You and I, though, are jumping on the Christian Jones train the week that he's playing Tyree Wilson, who might be the best defensive lineman in the Big 12, doesn't play for either Texas or Oklahoma. Are you worried that you and I have jinxed Christian Jones this weekend?
No, Christian Jones is a big boy. He didn't even need to worry about little old me jinxing him, man. He needs to go out and do his job, right? It's like jinxing. Come on.
So, are we at a point where Christian Jones is jinx proof?
You got to tell Alex, because you know what? I mean, I would love to hear, because Alex was pretty constructive in his criticism of Christian's performance last year, and Alex, hey, to be fair, he's singing a different tune about him based off of what he's seeing, and so I don't, Alex would be the one that could probably answer that better because he's seen every snap of this guy.
Look, I mean, it's just like if you just, it's probably fair to at least consider the notion that he's going to regress to what what we've known of him previously, right? It's like he scored an 8.2 in the deep dig, which is like, if he scores like that for the rest of the year, he's going to get drafted. There's no question. If he scores like that, he plays. Sorry, I'm having to pull up a bunch of different sheets, and so I think it's slowing down my computer. If I'm kind of, am I blurring for you guys or anything right now?
No, you're good. Take your time.
I'm just trying to pull it up from last year just so we can compare it apples to apples. It's like he's never played a game where you look at him and you say, yeah, he's playing at an NFL level. That's how he played versus UTSA. No disruption in that one. And if we just look last year, I mean, it's scoring an 80.2 in the deep dig. I just want to see what the closest he's ever come. Like, if it's like under flood in 2021, the closest he's ever come to that was a 77.92 last year, and that was versus Tech. No disruption allowed in this game. So he's now on top of the whole ranking sheet as far as disruption allowed on the season. He's ahead of Hayden Connor, who had a rough game in this deal. He's up above. I don't have that one pulled up because I just pulled up 2021, but I believe he's at somewhere just south of 36 snaps per disruption allowed and or penalty incurred. I mean, if that's the case with Christian Jones, we're looking at a completely different player than in 2021, wherever we talked about the grades per week, but the snaps per disruption last year for Christian Jones was 23.4. That's a world of difference, dude. You're talking, versus if we're looking just versus the historical data on it, every week I do, because I've been doing this now for 9 seasons. or this is the 10th season, right? So the 9 seasons before, you look at the guys who are ahead of him here in this, and over the course of the 9 seasons, with Christian Jones at the very top now, what do you have? Like 9 players over the course of these 9 seasons that have had years where they had let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like there are about 11 of these guys that have had better seasons, but here's the better seasons as far as snaps per disruption allowed. But I mean, you're talking about guys like, I mean, it is just guys like Cosme and Connor Williams and Trey Hopkins and Donald Hawkins and Junior Anglau, of course, Derek Kerstetter that's on a NFL practice squad, Cosme again, Kerstetter again, and then Parker Braun that season he had. Parker Braun had basically the season he had at guard over 852 snaps, 35.5 snaps per disruption allowed. He's right there with Christian Jones at 35.4. Kelvin Banks is up there at 35.1. So it's crazy to me. I was saying it's crazy to me that he scored better this week than Kelvin Banks, because Kelvin Banks, I look back, and the only guy that's gotten off to a better start in a season in the deep dig scoring was Sam Cosme. This is the year that he left early for the NFL. He started out with like an 80 and a 79 and an 81 or something like that, right? But that's a guy that was a junior bound for the NFL. Even if you look at Connor Williams in 2017, the year that he left, he was looking like he was going to start like that. But you remember he got hurt in the San Jose State game. So he didn't get to play a third game to start out that season. So, I mean, Kelvin Banks is off to basically certainly the hottest start we've ever seen for a freshman over the last decade. The second hottest start for any offensive lineman that we've seen over this decade. And Christian Jones just played a better game than he did. And so it's just like whether or not we're worried about him, like reverting, I mean, you got to be worried about it. I mean, everything we've seen out of him says he's surely due to revert from this, but I don't think it's because we're jinxing him. I just think we're pointing out that he played a really good game. We're pointing out as we're saying, look, like as far as we know, what we know is his upside is, what he's capable of achieving versus what I think was basically a pretty weak UTSA defense, right? What he's capable of achieving, we've seen it, right? We've at least seen a high water mark. We know that he can do that versus that kind of defense. Now, whether UTSA was really bad, whether he can keep it up, whether he regresses, that's all yet to be seen. But he's certainly set a high water mark for himself that's, I mean, interesting, if nothing else.
Alex, I don't know if I'd expect him to regress that much. I mean, he's playing a whole new position, right? And then obviously going from left to right. And then also maybe on the right side, is he not always facing the opponent's best pass rusher, like maybe he'd probably be on the left side. So it's probably a little bit easier for him this year. And maybe he just feels more comfortable on the right side on top of that.
Well, and it's just like he's not always like Kelvin Banks is always on an island, right? Like with the nature of Texas slide protections, it's like Christian Jones just really isn't quite as often.
Yeah. I'm looking at your thing, and Christian has slightly higher snaps snaps per disruption than Kelvin Banks, but I still think Kelvin's performance is more impressive, doing it on the left side, right?
Well, he is. And I mean, over the course of it, if you just look at the average and the median grades over the first 3 games, I mean, Kelvin Banks is scoring much. I mean, Christian Jones he's had one really good game, but I thought it was really interesting that Christian Jones, and it's funny, man, Sarkisian said the same thing in his press conference, the exact same thing that I said in the deep dig last Thursday. I said, what's the biggest thing about Christian Jones so far this year? Or mainly the offensive line, really. You haven't noticed him. You haven't noticed him. If you're not somebody that's just sicko like me that sits there and watches right down the middle of the line.
A couple little penalties here and there, but other than that,
you don't really notice it. Whereas in the past, your eyeballs have just been drawn to some disaster off the edge, and you're just trying to watch Xavier Worthy go up, catch the pass, but you can't help it to look down over here. You're like, what the hell's going on there with the offensive line? It hadn't happened as much this year. I think that with if you watch closely, there's some definite things that need cleaning up, but especially with Cole Hudson. But he showed nice flashes, but with the tackles, if Christian Jones could play at a level like this, or even within like a 10% range of this for the rest of the season, this is the best tackle duo at Texas of the last decade. I mean, hands down, absolutely zero questions about it. There's not anybody that's been close as far as 2 guys if they can both operate at this general level.
Let's take a super chat question because I have some updated thoughts to share that will actually make the Modcast this week before they make their way over to orangebloods.com. So you all agree that Ewers doesn't go this weekend, makes the game scary if he doesn't. Just so you know, literally before we came on the air, one of the things that I said to the team here was that, Card getting the start kind of translates to that game being losable in a way that, I don't know, doesn't feel like maybe if Quinn Ewers was playing this week and he's healthy, it feels like that changes everything. And suddenly Texas is closer to a 70-point offense than maybe what it's been since Quinn went out. I have been saying all week long, look, I'm not reporting that Quinn Ewers is going to play, but a guy that I trust has been since Monday of last week. He was like, don't worry about Hudson Card. He's definitely going to play. He was the first one to tell me that Quinn Ewers wasn't as hurt, as bad as everybody thinks. And he thought that, he basically said he thought Quinn would dress last week, and then he did. Then all week long, he's been telling me he thinks that Quinn Ewers is going to start. So today, Sark has the press conference and says he's going to be taking all 4 quarterbacks. We've been kind of reading into that. I sent a message. By the way, does everybody other than me at this point think that Card's going to start on Saturday?
I think Card starts.
You said you thought Quinn was going to start.
Correct. I'm saying, does everybody else on the panel think that Card gets to go on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so. But like I said, you guys have the sources. If it were me, I would start Card.
I'm making this all super dramatic.
It's a setup. It's a setup question.
It is a setup question. Just go along with the flow.
Go, Jason.
Damn it! Now you got me hesitant. But yes, I do think Hudson Card is going to start this weekend.
I sent a text message right before we started to the source that I'm referencing, and I'm just saying, hey, what did I say? I just said we've been told that it's likely that Quinn won't play this weekend. His response to me was not playing.
Yeah.
Says that they think he can play, should be good to go by next week, even though he appears fine. Looks like they just want to err on the side of caution.
It just kind of goes in line with what I heard yesterday. It wasn't as emphatic as that, but it makes sense, right? Don't put him out there and risk further injury. Because
I think it sounds like they're sensitive to the perception if they did put him out there and he got hurt. Then it looks like you rushed him back. And so, it looks like Hudson Card will be the starter. They're taking 4 quarterbacks. Now it makes a little more sense why they would take 4, right? And Jason, you mentioned it earlier, taking 4 for you was an indication that Card probably starts on Saturday. It'll be interesting to see in a world where they need the backup. Would they break the glass with Quinn Ewers? We probably won't know unless there's an injury. What do we all think about the game? What does this game?
That still kind of falls in line to the original close prognosis, which was 4 to 6 weeks, and so we're getting closer to that. And then originally, what we also later has the goal was trying to get him back for West Virginia, which would put him at the 3-week mark. But if not, then shooting for that 4. So we're still trending towards what the original prognosis was as relates to the injury. Just want to go put that.
Yeah, if he comes back next week, that's 3, and that's knocking on the door of a neighbor of 4. So starts to look a little bit more like the lower end of that original prognosis. They want him back before. What's that?
Well, you have West Virginia in Austin, though. If he's healthy, you play him, of course. But
they don't. From what I've heard, nobody wants him coming back
on his first game back.
Oklahoma game.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
If at all possible, they'd rather his next snap not be
shake the rust off against West Virginia. Yeah.
On a 1 to 10 worry scale, I don't care who takes the question first. By the way, thanks, Cell LLC, for the super chat question.
Hey! Before you ask that, can I address somebody who said something in chat before you move on to this next thing catch? Okay, just somebody said something about that I grade Hayden Connor too high. Look, I think you have a lot of. I think he has some recency bias from this last week, where he says he sees Hayden Conner looking around too much, because Hayden Conner played his worst game of the season this last week, and I don't know if you've read the deep dig this week, but he certainly got graded as if. But Hayden Conner's been a good player. To say that he played like he did versus UTSA for the rest of the season, especially versus Alabama's cockamamie. So I'm sorry, Catch. I just wanted to that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to come back to you on the offensive line in a little bit, because the Cole Hudson stat, historically speaking, in terms of disruption allowed, is worth having a conversation about. But I wanted to stick with what I think is now the big question mark 2 days before this game. And Anwar, I'll just come to you first. Hudson Card starts the game. What does that mean in terms of what we expect on? As I said, I think if Quinn Ewers plays, it feels a little more racetrack-ish. And I don't know what to think necessarily about the offense when Hudson's in there, based on what they had him do a week ago.
Well, I think one of the things I think in the war room last week was that people inside the building felt pretty confident that Sarkisian had a plan to get through the next 2 weeks, which was UTSA and Texas Tech. So within those four walls, they've seemed to believe that they've strategized and kind of had in their mind that this is what it was going to be. Now look, Hudson does, come with, his own set of concerns, because can you do what they did last week, which was have a very somewhat limited offense, have them almost kind of in a phone booth, and then miss on the deep shots, So I think what was the longest reception last week, like 19 yards or something to that effect. So, no real deep shots, no real deep plays, but, this is also a Tech team that average is to say that at best, maybe that's an average team. And so, if you got a healthy, you still got Bijan, you still got Roshan that's out there. And if Hudson can just be somewhat productive, I don't know if you need Hudson to be an all-star to beat Texas Tech. That what it's. Hey, Jason might be in a gang for all we know. He might be repping something at this point. So but just be careful you go to LA like that, Jason, because just know if you go out there, that's not going to fly. But yeah, I still think I think the game plan will mirror what we saw this past week, with just the hope that they actually do hit on some more of those deep passes. And I think if they do that, then they'll probably be fine against Tech.
Jason, what are your thoughts just on the offense with Card this weekend?
It just feels like a struggle. Listen, I don't like bashing on Hudson Card, and I still think he's got immense talent, but it just seems like things come so much more difficult when he's on the field. He's just not as decisive. Anwar put it perfectly that – that's my Anwar put it. I was looking at the stats. Anwar put it perfectly that they kind of played him in a phone booth last week. Everything was like literally for the first 2.5, 3 quarters. It seemed like it was at the line of scrimmage or throws behind the line of scrimmage. They've got to be able to push the ball downfield. This is a Texas Tech secondary that's played pretty well. They've got 5 seniors starting, including a 6th-year senior. So, I'm going to pick Texas to win this game, but to answer the super chat question, I don't remember how exactly it was phrased, but is it a worrisome game going to Lubbock with a backup quarterback who hasn't been, exceptional? Absolutely. It's worrisome for Texas. This game could get away from Texas look what the hell. UTSA, that was a 4-point game with a minute left in the third quarter. This team has to play better than that. That's at home against UTSA. But then I say all that, Catch, and I'm like, this is a Texas Tech team that stormed the field when they beat Houston. It's still Texas Tech. This is a very average football team. Texas should be able to win it with Hudson Card.
It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, but it is worrisome. I think if Hudson doesn't play better than he did last week.
Alex, 1 to 10 scale of worry. Where are you at?
You always got to be at least a 5 going into Lubbock, right? Just going into Lubbock alone. Like you could be going into Lubbock to play a team full of I saw the Pomeranians wearing face masks. Like, I mean, you still worry. There's some voodoo up there, man. It's crazy.
Image right there.
Yeah. I wouldn't be worried about I wouldn't give it a 5 if it really were Pomeranians, I guess. but I mean, you give it. But just dude, there's voodoo at Tech. I've heard people talk about it saw earlier people talk about it in the chat, just about the memories that people have about Michael Crabtree and Blake Gideon, and there've been games, there've been spooky games up there, man. So, but as far as I said it last week. As long as Texas doesn't bled up and it was just really, really show their ass here after that Alabama showing, I'll just always lean back on that Alabama showing. With Hudson Card, with this team, despite any faults that we may, any faults that we may perceive as we microanalyze every bit of it. Texas is capable of beating good teams. They're capable of it. We talked about that high watermark with Christian Jones. We've seen the high watermark for this team. And so if they weren't able to beat somebody like Tech pretty decidedly, it would be very disappointing. So I'm like, my level of worry for this team is not going to be anything particularly high in any game besides OU moving forward, simply because, I think it's simply because Texas should win. And I think it's even crazy that this ESPN FPI stuff that Alex Loeb talks about when he's waiting for Steve Sarkisian to get his ass up there to the PC. Why is he taking so long this year to get to the press conferences? It's like Alex Loeb you can tell Alex Loeb's like, Jesus Christ, how many times I got to talk about this shit? But he keeps talking about the ESPN FPI. I can't believe Texas is favored to win via this thing.
I think they're ridiculous
in every single game left of the season. It's just really, they're a 54% chance of winning. They have them against Oklahoma. So, look, for me, Texas Tech, like I say, level of worry is 5 just because it's Lubbock, but I think Texas should handle this one.
Texas hasn't lost in Lubbock since 2008. Texas Tech was the number 7 ranked team in the country then. And the one prior to that was 2002. So they've lost twice in the last 20 years. I mean, this whole Lubbock mysterious thing, crazy things happen in Lubbock, their narrative kind of needs to die down. Now, listen, as soon as I say that, crazy shit will happen on Saturday. But I mean, really, it's not as intimidating as maybe.
And adding into that, Jason, I looked it up too because I was like, Texas has won the last 4 games just versus Tech. The last time Tech beat Texas was in 2017, and then Texas won in 2016. So, 5 out of the last 6 meetings, Texas has won. So, that to your point, just adding into that, Jason, I think at some point we're getting Tech a little bit too much credit. They may be competitive, but it ain't like they posted a win in a long period of time. Again,
some of them have been pretty close looking at the scores. I mean, a lot of 1-score or 10-point games. So they've been competitive, pretty close games, but it's not like Texas has had any problem in recent years going up to Lubbock and winning. So,
Jason, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, isn't the truth that we overhype the trip to Lubbock more than history says that?
Based on what Jason just said, maybe we do. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Alvar's been here since 2014, and all he's ever heard is, "Man, Lubbock is a scary." Anwar's undefeated in Lubbock.
Hey, Anwar's a good luck charm. There you go.
I mean, Crabtree catch is okay, I get it, but that's a pretty damn long time ago, man. Crabtree probably has kids in high school at this point, man. We gotta let that shit go at this moment.
It's like getting out in the ocean and being scared to jump out into the water for fear of getting eaten by a shark. Whenever you have you're twice as likely to die in America by having a vending machine fall on you than you are by getting bit by a shark. It's just like the vision of it, man. It's so visceral. You don't want to think about it. That's how the whole thing with Crabtree and all the rest of it kind of feels to Texas fans.
Anwar, the answer to the question is that game's that haunting. That Tech game. I mean, Texas fans still have the PTSD from that Crabtree catch and the fallout from it. It's like playing Alabama. Anyway.
I mean, that's so many years ago at this point. I mean, I guarantee you Crabtree's got a kid in middle school or about to be in high school at this moment.
Jason, just to make it run the jinx factor even further. I was just about to say the one thing that you really say about Hudson Card, really, even in the Arkansas game going back, he's not a guy that turns the ball over. I mean, we just got finished talking about Donovan Smith in two games, what he's done in terms of being a turnover monster.
Mm-hmm.
Hudson Card might not be sticking the deep throw, and Hudson Card might be limited in some shape, form, or fashion in ways that Sarkisian doesn't want to push the envelope with. But Hudson Card, this really goes back to the battle with Casey Thompson last summer. One of the things that people would say was Hudson Card doesn't turn the ball over a lot. So, I think that the recipe for, Tech making this game close and having a chance to win, I think, is Hudson Card has a bad performance. But in bad performance, I mean a pick six or a strip sack or something that you can't even completely account for in a game prediction. I think they've got to feel pretty good that he can bus drive this game to a victory if everybody around him plays like they have for most of this season.
Fair assessment. If he doesn't turn the ball over, and if Texas Tech continues their pattern of turning the ball over a couple of times a game, Texas should win this game. But I mean, who's to say those patterns aren't going to change this weekend? But if things hold true to their current, what we've seen so far, yes, I still think Texas wins this game with Hudson Card.
What do we think the point total for victory will be this weekend? Do you have to score 30? I don't know that I see Tech's offense scoring 30 points against Texas.
Texas not scoring 30 against Texas Tech, you're saying?
No, I'm saying I don't know that Texas will need to score 30 because I don't know that Tech is going to score that many points.
That's a good question. I would put it pretty close to 30. I mean, Tech's going to throw the ball a lot. They're going to put up some decent yardage totals. I would think 28 minimum, 28 close to 30. So.
Especially to win on the road, right? You're not, so we're not going to go back to 21-17, right? We can't.
No, I don't know. The point about that prediction wasn't how many points Tech would score, it was how many points Texas would score. I'm just asking how many will it take, not how many Texas will finish with. I'm just wondering, because this is this may be the most anemic Tech offense that Texas has played since pre-Mike Leach. And they really, right now with the backup quarterback, are struggling to put points on the scoreboard. They've been okay. They didn't do anything. They scored 14 last week against NC State on the road. Okay. But, they play Houston. That was not a great game. I mean, it was two average teams playing close to each other, so it was competitive. But you didn't watch that game and think that Texas is in danger if Texas Tech comes out and does what they're doing. They're a little bit like UTSA. And I guess to Jason's point, that was a 4-point game with 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So maybe you shouldn't clown on UTSA too much. But I don't know. I tend to think if Texas scores 20, they might win the game. I don't know. I'm not completely convinced that Texas Tech is the first team to break 21 against Texas this year, I guess.
Catch, is their quarterback, or Jane, is their quarterback, is he better than what Frank Harris was?
No. God, no.
I don't think he's better than Frank Harris. I really like Frank Harris, but he can run the ball. Their quarterback can run the ball, so he does a lot of the same things Frank Harris does, but not as Frank Harris had the terrible interception. But
he's nowhere near the football player that Frank Harris is.
Frank Harris
he's more toolsy.
He is, but he just makes a lot more mistakes that can turn a game in a hurry.
The difference on War is that Smith has a big old arm, and he tries to make he'll make an occasional Quinn Ewers from August throw where he'll turn the ball over in a way that you just can't, because by God, he really does have a big arm. There will be a point on Saturday where he'll make a throw and you'll go, oh, he can do that. And then it'll cloud the way you think of him, because he just doesn't quite yet know how to harness what he has from a physical ability standpoint. Whereas Frank Harris is cagey and, seems to have a real feel for the game. I think when I watch Texas Tech, that's the thing that Smith misses that Frank Harris has, where you just feel like the game is slow for Frank Harris. And I think the game's probably still a little fast for Donovan Smith. And I think that, if you're a Texas defensive lineman, this got to be a game where you think – I haven't seen Baron Sorrell's dad in the chat yet. But Mr. Sorrell, he's got to be thinking my boy's getting 2 this week.
And I think I saw 10 sacks on the season, just compared to Big 12 teams. The next highest is 7, so pretty significantly decent margin. I mean, between the second worst team. So giving up 10 sacks in 3 games, you got to figure against shitty competition. So, I mean, Texas should be able to go out and get 4 or 5 or 6 of them this weekend, you'd think.
Hey, Alex, I thought we would have thought that about the UTSA game because UTSA was down so many offensive linemen. I know this is going back to earlier in the week when you did the defensive side of the ball in the deep dig, but what did you see with the defensive line against an offensive line that it felt like on paper they should have been more disruptive than they were? And I know some of that Frank Harris was elusive and would-be sacks were canceled out because of his mobility, but did you feel like Texas was as good against UTSA up front as they should have been?
No, nobody did. I mean, you watched the game. You all watched it. Everybody watching this watched it. They weren't. They didn't even look as good versus UTSA as they did against Alabama.
So how does that happen?
I don't know. Now towards the end of the game, like I said in the column, man, it felt like and look, this is not necessarily bad. The Texas, at the end of the game, it felt like a heavyweight fighter the defense did. They've just been leaning on them all, and they finally just broke them. They finally broke them, and they finally just ended up winning these one-on-one battles, and it was fine. But, man, at the very beginning, things weren't schemed up the way that they were versus Alabama. They weren't as attacking. I know there were people in that thread telling me, like, how can you say the game plan was different? Like, of course you're not going to run stunts against Frank Harris. I'm just slapping my head. I was like, wait, I'm just like, what? You don't think you can run stunts? Of course you don't want to run fixed stunts against a quarterback who can run. But one, you could definitely run read stunts for sure. You can have the same attacking mentality for sure. For two, you don't have to get to such stupid depth behind the quarterback off the outside edges. You could be more attacking with your ability to get upfield, convert your speed to power, and rip inside. They weren't doing that. They were running their ass way back behind the quarterback, allowing him all kinds of room to run forward, manipulate the pocket, and go find yards with his feet. And the other thing is, it's like if you can't, getting back to the stunts, not running read stunts, like are we looking at Bryce Young as some kind of sub athlete here? Somebody who's like not capable of. Somebody's just like he's completely incapable of ever beating you with his legs if you give him the opportunity. It's ridiculous. It was different the way that I'm not saying the game plan was ridiculous. I'm saying that some of the criticism that I received by saying that the game plan was different was crazy because it certainly was. You would expect. And look, now does that have to do with Texas coming out and maybe being hangover from I guess what is how we call it, kind of a hangover from the Alabama, like, they had a big game, an emotional win or an emotional moral kind of victory, an emotional game, right? Versus Alabama. Don't come into UTSA as hot, I guess. I would say if that's the case, though, the coaches needed to get on them this week and say, look, this is a conference game. This is the beginning of a conference game. If you can't get up from this, you don't have blood in your veins. You don't have air in your body, man. Like you need to get up for this game and go out there like your hair is on fire. I think if they go out there, they can attack in that same way, and if they can just bring just a little bit of that kind of misdirection and tomfoolery with those games from the very front. I think that they can get it done this week. It'll just be Tucker Dorsey. How does he step up for Overshown, and can the defensive line be as good as they were, being able to generate pressure even sometimes without even bringing that outside linebacker. So. I guess we'll see, but yeah, UTSA was not that was not it on defense at all. I mean, they didn't look good at all until halfway through the third quarter.
I mean, I bring it all up because I'm sitting here calling Texas Tech's offensive line potentially a stats game for Texas, but I think we thought that last week. It's like, oh God, they're down 4 offensive linemen. Think about the Texas offensive line right now. 4 stars, like if they were down to their 4th tackle. if, we would, from a Texas perspective, I was just thinking, Jesus, that's destitute if Texas was down, let's say 3 tackles and a guard. Like it'd be
you're down like Kelvin Banks. You're down Kelvin Banks. You're down
Christian
Jones, and then you're down Andre Carrick. And so like, all of a sudden you got like Cam Williams out there at left tackle. And you don't know what the hell to expect. Yeah, man. Yeah.
They had that last week, and they didn't necessarily thrive off of that, I guess.
And they ran the ball pretty well too. It wasn't just Texas didn't get to the passer. I mean, before their running back got injured, UTSA was running the ball effectively. So who knows what we'll see from this Texas defensive line this week. But
onward, makes for a fun game, right? I mean, I think back to last year's Tech game, and Texas fans probably I loved a 70-point beatdown, all right? I mean, Texas fans would take that now, but all things considered, competitive games are fun to watch. It feels like, this is good. It feels like this is going to be a competitive game. I don't know that I sense a boat race this weekend.
Yeah, hold on. I was just texting one of my sources. Yeah, I would definitely sense that too. I think this is one of those things that I think is going to start out, to your point, like I think it's going to be high energy. I think Tech fans looking sold out, so they're going to be loud. I mean, they're going to be into it, and it's going to be a hostile environment. So in some ways, Hudson has been in a situation like this because he's been in Arkansas. So it probably benefits him just a little bit. Like, okay, been there, done that. I know exactly what to expect from that, and I think Tech will be hyped for a little bit, but then after a while, I see them pounding them with Bijan, hitting them with Roshan, hit a play here or two, and then at that point, you're eventually pulling away. Like again, hopefully this is not famous last words, but then I see them pulling away. So I see a lot of energy coming from Tech. But then eventually I see kind of them getting punched in the chest and kind of getting worn down in the latter rounds. And then next thing you know, there's a couple of big breaks, big runs. And then next thing you know, the score is, somewhat lopsided.
Before we go into parting shots, this can even be my parting shot. I've been wanting to tell this story all week long, and I haven't. I have like what I think is the perfect Texas Tech story. Texas Tech football in terms of playing Texas. Back in 98, I believe, I'm hanging over at Sukamel's house. And it's a Texas watch party at Sukamel's house. This is or we're both working. I don't know. You might have been. I don't even think you were Horns Illustrated yet, Jason. This might have still been.
You used to work with Terry?
No. No. Different group.
That's how you learn how to ask all those great questions.
You learned it all from Jason.
He learns how to incorporate books in the questions.
And I don't want to get Jason in trouble with his wife, but I think this was the weekend where Jason had this girl come over to his house. She just stayed there for like 4 days.
Oh, yeah. That was definitely before my wife.
No, it was way before. So we're hanging out at Jason's house, and I'm telling them the story when Makovic used to hold the Texas official visits. He would let us bring our KI cameras to the hotel and basically the coaches would hand us off anybody that we wanted. So, like I remember breaking Quentin Jammer's commitment to Texas because one of the coaches just walked him on over to me, and, crazy to think how that is compared to today. So, I know, right? So I'm sitting at the old Marriott on 11th Street, and they're all having breakfast. And Makovic goes to sit for breakfast with this kid, Derek Doris, who was a wide receiver, I think, from Azle. And he's there with his dad. And they bring the kid in for an official visit. And it sounded like Derek Doris wanted to commit. And Makovic goes over to their breakfast table, literally at the very end of their visit, last thing, and is like, yeah, we're not going to offer Derek a scholarship. Derek's old man gets furious. He's letting Makovic know, my son's going to go someplace, and he's going to play against you, and he's going to kick your ass, and we will never forget this moment, kind of a thing. Like, he was furious. and I'm sitting like 3 feet away from it, and I feel guilty for being so close to such a personal thing. So I'm telling this story in 98 to Sukamel and like 10 other people in his apartment.
This had to be before 98. Like someone said, that was Ricky's year, right?
No, he's saying he was telling the story. In
This is
90.
happening
you're
in
telling
the
the
98
story. Oh, I'm
season.
sorry. Okay, sorry.
But this, I think, happened in 97. Like, I think Derek Doris was either a freshman or a redshirt freshman this year. And everybody will remember the play as I say it. Probably 10 minutes after I tell that story was the night where Derek Doris speared Anthony Hicks behind the knee and took him out for the rest of the season. And I always felt like that kind of encapsulated Texas Tech against Texas. A player that really wants to be at Texas, forced to play at Texas Tech. And when those two teams meet, there's an attitude about one team towards the other. I'll never be able to say Derek Doris did that on purpose, but that kid, based on what I saw, had reasons to want to go beyond the whistle and maybe play a little dirty. And in the end, Anthony Hicks was having a great year in 1998. And, that pretty much ended his career for all intent and purposes. It was a horrible, horrible behind the knees, like crackback spear. And anyway, that's it. I feel like all these years later, that's still who Texas Tech is.
A bunch of guys at Texas Tech who Texas probably didn't recruit for the most part. They got overlooked. They feel spurned. I said Alabama was Texas's Super Bowl. Texas was UTSA's Super Bowl. We saw the kind of effort UTSA game. Texas is going to be Texas Tech's Super Bowl. I mean, Texas Tech's going to give maximum effort this week, and that stuff matters. And we'll see how it plays out. But I expect Texas Tech to give good effort, and I think it'll be a competitive ball game. And that girl you mentioned, Catch, I would invite her over to hang out for like a couple hours. 3 days later, Anwar and Alex, she'd still be there.
Yes.
One morning I got up and I'm like, okay, I got to go to a wedding or a funeral or something like that. And she's like, okay. I literally put on like a suit and like walked down to my truck. And then finally she left. And I put her right back around, right up to back to my apartment. That's the only way I could get her to leave. So,
Sukamel's apartment used to be. It's funny that he's known today as like the great,
the great prude of
yeah, he's a prude. He's a prude because his old apartment was Grand Central Station, and there was wild stuff all the time.
Look, back in the many.
One of his roommates, I won't say the name. He might even be watching the video. He would just walk into like the bedroom and start watching porn during a commercial and wouldn't close the door.
He wasn't even a roommate.
Nobody thought anything of it. Hey, nobody was like, dude, shut the door.
He lived there, Catch. He wasn't even a roommate. He didn't have a room on the couch. He slept on the couch in the living room for a while. Yeah.
Anyway, good times. We'll go into party shots here on the Modcast. Anwar has that look that I think he gets sometimes when,
I just, because you have questions, but then I just don't want to go down the rabbit hole of it because because
those are drunk uncle questions. If I'm ever a guest on Drunk Uncle, we'll go down that rabbit
hole. Because I'm hoping he was just watching it, but I don't think anyone.
Weird.
He was. He was.
No, that's weird, man. We had I guess this would be my parting shot because I didn't prepare anything. But we used to have we had, and I know what Anwar's saying because back when I was in a band and we were touring on we would tour on a tour bus, and then but some for smaller like regional tours we get this Sprinter sprint. I don't even know who makes Sprinters. It's called a Sprinter van. It's one you can kind of stand. You can stand up in them. Mm-hmm. And walk down the aisle. And we had this roadie for a while. We thought he was pretty cool, but dude, every night after shows, he would sit in the back and he'd pull up his phone or his iPad or whatever, and he would watch porn. And he would just sit there and watch it. He would sit there and watch it just like it's a he's
watching Seinfeld or something.
Yeah, just watch it. we got so creeped out by this guy. We had to fire him. We're like, what kind of like who just sits back here and just watches the porn?
At least he was in the back, dude.
I think there are people like this on War.
There are. I'm telling you, we've
they
seen
just like
them.
to watch. So it's.
So you think Alex, do you think that guy would like get on a plane at Southwest and just put in his headphones and just sit there and watch, and just like watch it like it's something normal?
Yeah. So it's an odd phenomenon, but it does exist, and I do believe Jason to catch his story here.
Anwar, he's that guy that does it in class in college. Everybody's seen those videos where like rando guy has headphones on, he's watching porn, but he doesn't realize that everybody can hear the audio. That's, I think, like 1 out of every 10 men fall into that category. It's an unofficial guesstimate. Does anybody have a parting shot?
There used to be a guy that it was one of our assistant editors in Tampa back in the day, and apparently he was the go-to guy because he had like the biggest porn collection, and so guys would like check out porn from him and stuff like that. So like that's how extensive his collection was back in the VHS tape stage. So eventually he starts dating a woman who works in HR, right? A lot of irony, but any case, she sees his collection. She gets absolutely freaked out by it, right? And then she was a friend of mine, and so she's like, I can't live in a house that's like this, right? This is just too much porn for me. And he's like, no worries, I'm gonna throw it away, so on and so forth, right? So he goes in and like gets a trash bag and acts like he's gonna throw it away, right? And then one day she's noticing like there's a certain hidden something that with a kind of a lock on it, right? So she's a friend of mine. She calls me up. I was like, what kind of lock is it? I was like, oh, that's an easy one to pick. Just get such and such. She picked it up. It was all his porn. It was like right there. He had not gotten rid of it. And then eventually they had to come to Jesus, and then he eventually had to get rid of his porn.
Reminds me, there's no dirtier person in America than engineers that worked at TV stations in the 90s at news stations, because they would literally be watching the news. But all that scrambled porn that people was like famous in the 80s and 90s, you know, like, oh, you would watch a boob on the Playboy channel and maybe look for a nipple or something like that. There would be like hardcore stuff. And this guy's just like popping in tapes and doing his job and in the background.
Oh my God.
Every night. Just
that's a change.
Every night you could walk back there to drop off a tape and be like, oh, okay. Okay.
Well, speaking of schmut, this could be my last trip to Lubbock.
It will be, I think, your last trip to Lubbock.
Yeah. So, because yes, if all goes well and Texas can get into the SEC by 2024, this would be it. And time will tell if this ends up being a rivalry that Texas wants to continue from a non-conference standpoint. I am on the belief that it shouldn't be continued. I think when Texas leaves the Big 12, they should kiss all these teams goodbye. I'm a huge believer, huge proponent that especially with the SEC schedule, I need Texas to start scheduling a lot easier opponents for those first 3 non-conference games.
Toss Baylor to the damn birds, man. They like all these idiots, man. No way.
Every single one.
Yes.
Do not continue any of these rivalries. The same way A&M said deuces to Texas and everybody else who was in that conference. That's what Texas needs to do. So every single one of these programs, deuces. And then look, Catch, if you want, I always said, like, if you want your guys, your boosters to have trips, there's ways to pull it off to go to a New Orleans but play a Tulane, right? Mm-hmm. You could go if you want to have a Florida trip. There's USF, there's FAU. Like, there's ways to give your guys good trips without having to play monsters and have to play killers. So this could be it. Catch, this could be it. So now you can start talking about your Lubbock memories. But yes, you're right. As I looked it up, 2014, I covered the game. Texas won 34-13. 2016, they won 45-37. 2018, 41-31, 2020, which ends up being the craziest game, one of the craziest games I think I've ever covered in my life, which was the 63-56 overtime miracle game versus Tech, where they had like that 1% chance of coming back, and just everything just kind of fell into place. So this could be it, and hopefully for my sake and all ours, I finished the Texas Tech 5-0. Won't go into any of my famous fun Lubbock stories because I did have another one back in 2020, but it's a lot of the political realm. But let's just say a guy didn't like some of the conversations that was being had at breakfast and flipped a chair and stormed out, and he literally like flung the chair. And then stormed out, and I was like, "Oh shit, I'm about to get shot." But needless to say, I won't miss Lubbock. But this.
I love that the chat is like, "You guys are off the rails," as if every chat that we've had so far this season hasn't been off the rails. That we off the railed the chat today, I don't know whether I should be proud. I'm kind of proud, but at the same time, I realize maybe I shouldn't be, which is a perfect time for me to thank Andy over at myperfectfranchise.net, the sponsor of the Modcast. Blake, go ahead and pop that graphic back up and let everybody see Andy's face. If you you've always wanted to run your own company, run your own franchise, and you just don't know where to start, that's what Andy does. Andy takes people who don't know where to start, and he gets them started and can change their life. Give him a reach out at – careful there Andy at myperfectfranchise.net or the number on the screen. I think we're ready to go. For myself, Alex, Anwar, Jason, Blake, the producer, and all of the people that we've referenced in the Modcast today that weren't here to defend themselves, there were many of them. We will see you guys next week. We'll actually see you Saturday night in the postgame show. So, go ahead, bookmark this. Subscribe to the channel. We will see you soon.